Hi and welcome to Sunday's show for GenderSpeaker Live. Still trying to get all these little bits and pieces working together. I was going to do that differently and then clicked the wrong button, but never mind, here we are. And today, talking about the difference between male brains and female brains. Is there a difference between a male brain and a female brain? This is a hot topic. This is a very controversial topic, and I'll be honest that it's actually getting more complicated and more difficult as we go along, looking at all the various different comments and views that people are coming out about. So there's our challenges. There's a difference between the two. Now, I've recently read a book by a Dr. Deborah So. And there's some good scientific evidence in there. She claims to be a neuroscientist, although looking at her background, it looks as though she's more a psychiatrist or psychologist, rather. And she has done quite a bit of research using MRI scans to look and see the differences between male and female brains. And she's come to the conclusion that, yes, there are differences. On the other hand, a couple of years ago, a book was written by Gina Rippon. And she came up with a view that, having used MRI scans, no, there isn't any difference between a male and female brain. And this is the challenge. We've got very learned people who've done doctorates looking at this and spent huge amounts of time using very expensive MRI equipment and research projects. And they're coming out with diametrically opposing views. Now, I would say, well, that's generally about people being biased, because sometimes people want there to be a difference because it suits their particular theories of life, and other people don't want there to be a difference because that suits their particular life. Now, it happens in the case of Rippon and So, both have an issue with trans people. Not a big issue, but they basically think that the argument and the claim that trans people put forward that, it's like having the wrong brain, that I've got a female brain and a male body. And they say, no, that can't be possible. The brains are no different. Or, as Deborah So's come out and saying, but the brains are different, but that actually is not what it's about. It's about sex, and, it's about your, what makes your body up as a sexual being, and that's what determines your gender. So she still comes out against trans people, which I find very difficult. So I'm not really going to focus on trans today, because I want to look specifically at that issue between male and female brains. Is there a difference? Now, the organization that I've looked rather more at is an organization called the Netherlands Institute for Neuroscience. It was called the Netherlands Institute of Brain Research, but they've been around a long, long time. And they've done some of the early research when I was still questioning, was I transgender? Was I transsexual? Was I trans? What was going on with me? Why was this a problem that I'd lived with all my life? And what the hell was I going to do about it? And bear in mind, I had been 47 years trying to tackle this before finally deciding that I was actually going to come out and be open about the fact that I'm transgender. I looked a lot at the work done by the Institute, and the problem is this. The differences in the brain are microscopically small. There do appear to be differences, and I'm convinced by the arguments from the Institute of Neuroscience in Netherlands that they have found differences. Deborah So actually supports the fact that there are those differences. She comes out with a different conclusion to me, but that's an interesting thing we'll come back to. The problem is that a lot of people have had a vested interest in saying, no, there's no difference. Because if there is a difference, as the Victorians used to believe, that female brains were incapable of handling things that male brains could handle because they were fundamentally different, that male brains were larger, and therefore that was why men were able to do things that women couldn't do. That isn't it. The brains inside the body are proportionate to the size of the body. That's simple as that. A large woman has the same size brain as a man of the same size. That's not it. There are though some small differences, and what we're talking about is there is a part of the brain in the hypothalamus which is the size of a pinhead, and it affects some of our gender issues. And in a woman, it is half the size. In a man, it is the size of a pinhead. In a woman, it is the size of half a pinhead. And that's the challenge. How do you determine when these things are so small inside the brain? And was that as a result of the way someone was born? Or was that because of hormones they took during life or other medical treatment that they had? Was it due to just life itself? Do things change as we go through life? We often have no idea what we're ingesting. There are hormones in chicken and meat, and there are various different hormones we're now finding in fish. So is ingesting and eating various quantities of those animal products actually affecting our brains? Certainly seems to be affecting other animals who ingest small animals. So there are so many arguments, so many difficult things to handle. So then we come down to the issue of maybe there seem to be some specific differences. And those differences, it looks as if what happened is that during fetal development, if you get testosterone in your system, during fetal development, whether you're, got XX or XY chromosomes, whether you're destined to be a boy or a girl, is a runner. If you get that testosterone, the right quantity in a boy will mean the boy will come out with gender and sex very much intact. They'll feel like a boy. They'll grow up to be a boy. They'll be comfortable being a man. If you get too much testosterone and it's a girl, then they'll come out being much more masculine in their behavior, maybe even in their appearance. If it's a boy and there's too little testosterone, the estrogen and all babies default to female without testosterone. So therefore, I believe what happened was during the fetal development, I didn't get enough testosterone at some point during fetal development. And it's not just once, it's constant different washes. So there are parts of me which are still quite masculine and, and comfortably so. And other parts just don't work. Never been particularly maternal, but then I know a lot of women who aren't very maternal. On the other hand, I do. There are other aspects of life that just feel comfortable being female. And I couldn't understand it. It's so hard to explain. What does it feel like to be female? Well, it just felt normal doing things with other women. There's this connection with other women, which wasn't the same as the connection I would expect with someone that I felt a relationship with. I had female friends that were just female friends and girlfriends, and they were not friends that were ever going to be, I was ever going to be in a relationship with. But I didn't fancy them. So the thing about gender is different to sexuality. Now, scientists have looked at the difference between male brains in gay men and male brains in straight men, and they have found that there are parts of the brain which appear similar to women in gay men, as there are parts of the brain which are more similar to men in gay women. The same with trans men, trans women. So all the time we're getting these sort of a sense that there are some differences, but is it nature or nurture? This is the big argument that comes forward. It's not about the brain, it's actually about the way we're brought up. And there's no question about it. The moment we are born, girls get treated differently to boys. And we've seen all sorts of experiments on this, where we've clothed girls in boys' clothes or boys clothed in girls' clothes, and they will be treated differently. We treat girls as if they're more fragile. We expect boys to be more rough and tough. And there's no reason for that, because up until the age of 11, certainly boys and girls are pretty much on a par with each other, equal strengths. You can see from their performance in schools and everything, boys and girls are not very different. That said, there's a clear tendency for boys to go towards mechanical objects, and boys tend to be a lot more solo working. They operate on their own. Girls, much more social, connecting with each other, much more drawn towards dolls and those sort of toys. Is that something that's we encourage? Well, I was watching a TV program the other day where they were putting down toys near a group of monkeys, and the female monkeys were picking up the girls' toys. The male monkeys were almost exclusively picking up the boys' toys. What is this? Why? I looked a lot at Deborah Tannen's work, and she's very clear that there are differences between men and women. And we can see this in the way people work. Yet men tend to work more solely. I worked in tech for a long time, rows and rows of men sitting at computer screens, working on their own, sending text messages and email messages to each other, even a desk away. Where women will much more connect and communicate with each other. If you look at the type of work I did, I got involved in marketing. Back in the 60s, it was very much a male-dominated role because women weren't really big in the workplace. We were still battling with sexual discrimination. 50 years ago today, this year, 50 years ago, the Equal Pay Act was brought out, and we still don't have equal pay. We've roughly got equal pay for the same job, but we still give the higher paying jobs to men and the lower paying jobs to women. Construction industry pays a lot more money to men in construction work. Healthcare, much lower pay to the nurses and the support staff. The only people who make a lot of money are the surgeons and consultants, and that tends to be male dominated, whereas the support staff tends to be very female dominated. So what we tend to see is women tend to do jobs which are more social, which are more about engaging with other people, but they also tend to get the jobs which pay the least. So there's that bias, and I'm going to look at unconscious bias and biases later on. The differences basically are all about behavior, but they're driven by that underlying sense of, am I a man or am I a woman? As I grew up, there was no question in my mind. I had the wrong body. My brain said female. My brain, I wanted to be doing the things that girls did, not the things that boys did. I wanted to engage. When I was at school, as I said yesterday, I was put up a year because the doctors saw me as being a couple of years ahead of my age mentally. Well, that's the way girls are. They thought I didn't get on with other children. It wasn't about getting on with other children. It was about getting on with boys. I was much more comfortable talking to girls, much more comfortable socializing with girls, but they were uncomfortable with me because, back to these behavioral differences, we are taught and encouraged into groups. The boys' entrance in the school, the girls' entrance in the school. So it's a really complex area, and one so fraught with difficulty and debate. I strongly believe, and I think most trans people believe, that the brain somehow is wired up to be more appropriate for male or female roles in life. And that depending on the amount of testosterone you get, you won't necessarily get the right brain. You'll get a brain which is geared towards a different type of thing. The best thing, of course, would be to get rid of all those gender differences and just let everybody wear what they want, let everybody be part of society, let everybody encourage everybody into what they feel most passionate about, instead of these sorts of rules and the bullying and the humiliation we put people through if they start to behave in a way which is not normal for being a male or not normal for being female. It's going to be a tough challenge. 50 years of equal pay legislation, still we don't have equality. The trans equality work, the LGBT equality work really has only come about in the past 20 years, and we're still struggling to get that together. But eventually we will. But it will only come if we start to stop gendering everything and allow people just to be themselves. But that means get rid of all differences, get rid of the idea of being male or being female. Just allow people to be comfortable with themselves in the way they express themselves and the way they wear clothes and the kind of jobs that they do. But I'm not sure we're ready for that. We still, if you've ever taken any of the Harvard Business School implicit association test, the test to see how biased you are, I was shocked to find how biased I am towards thinking of women and the family, men and work. It's so heavily embedded into our psyche. It's going to take a long time to go. Anyway, so there we go. Just to remind you that my transgender and non-binary inclusive inclusion workshops I'm running on Wednesday and Thursday this week. If you look down in the comments, you'll see a link which will take you to the Eventbrite page. It's a donation basis, so you pay what you can afford. I'm living in a world professional speaking industry which has literally been decimated by COVID-19. We're having to learn how to do things in a very different way. But please do join me if you would like on Wednesday or Thursday, and we can find a little bit more about how to make your workplace more trans inclusive. And at the same time, we're going to be looking at making it more gender friendly, more non-discriminatory within the workplace. Because once we can start doing that, actually, once we stop discriminating against women in the workplace, it actually makes it better for everybody. So there's the fundamental thing. I'm back again tomorrow, so please do join me for another episode of the GenderSpeaker live show, and I look forward to seeing you then. So have a good remainder of your Sunday, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.